If you're asking this question about whether or not you should make a big life change, I have some advice for you. And this could be around a relationship, moving to another city, taking on another job. The thing that's going to hold you back from making clear decisions is that you're stuck in habit and routine. You're familiar with it, that you're less likely to try something new. It's the very thing that holds us back from seeing and seizing new opportunities. So this could be like, for example, I'm talking to Rodrigo here about whether or not he should move from Miami or to Los Angeles or some other place in the world. And he has some roots there, and it's important to have a center of who you are in terms of your family, your neighborhood, your upbringing. But it shouldn't be at the cost of you taking on new opportunities. I want to refer to something that my friend Noreen Morioka said, which is comfort is a slow death. That oftentimes the opportunity that is before us is shrouded in what looks like challenges and problems and pain points and headache. But that's exactly where the reward is. Because if you can make a lot of money and seize new opportunities without taking any risk, then everybody would do it, and that thing wouldn't be very valuable at all. So let's get into some specifics here. Rodrigo is 38 years old, so that means he's not a young man. He doesn't have the same flexibility that he did when he was 19 or 22 years old. So it seems almost like we're damned the older that we get. The more set in routine that we are, the less likely we are to make the necessary steps and changes to our lives that will benefit us the most. And you have to think about this, like what is really holding you back? So for him specifically, he's thinking about the clients he's already built up, the routine, he knows where to go and get freelancers to help him. He knows production companies, and he's kind of set up. But here's what we do. We say, if you can map your life out in the next 5 to 10 years on the trajectory that you're on right now. And the way that we can do that is we can look at the last 3 years of billings, opportunities, profile of jobs, awards, anything that matters to you, and see, is it trending upward, downward, or is it flat across the board? So if you say, if I live in this town for another 5 years working with the kinds of clients I have access to, what does that do for my life, my career, and for my financial well-being? And if it's like skyrocketing, don't change anything. That would be the craziest thing to do, to say like, everything's working really well right now, and I'm going to do something totally different. Some people do that and have tremendous reward because of that, but they're like super adventurous and have big ideas. They have world-conquering ideas, and for them, it doesn't matter where they are and what they're doing. They feel it in their heart, they know what to do. So just think about that for a second, Rodrigo. If you are looking at the next 5 years based on the trajectory that you're on right now, does it look like where you want to be? And if it is, you shouldn't move. And if it's not, or it's not moving as fast as you would like, then we can explore the other option, is what is there to gain? So much of human nature is about where we want to protect something, like we're more afraid of losing what we have than the potential gain of something we don't have. And so sometimes that's a cognitive bias. We're skewed. It's a loss aversion bias. Once we have something, we don't want to give it up. You have to kind of think about what's in it for you, like what happens when you move. So first, we live in the world of possibilities. We say, if you move, or if you take on a job, or if you leave a current relationship and get a different relationship, what is the potential? Let's look at the positive sides. What do you gain? So let's take moving to LA. I can imagine lots of things. Well, number one, the things you have to gain are access to a whole different kind of clientele. Imagine all the clients that you have today, and then just exit, because people that come to LA are very ambitious and driven, and they're more often than not world-class in what they do, because there's a lot of money here, so that money attracts the very best people, and so those people can potentially be new clients. So if you're working with, like, let's just pick something relatively boring and say like a dentist, and you're doing marketing for them, do you think there are better, higher profile dentists that are trying to be at the highest part of their game, the highest level? And if the answer is yes, then is that true with other industries, with real estate or tech or finance or whatever else? You kind of just look at the different industries in which you can work in. Are the players here, or are they somewhere else? And that's how you start to make those decisions. Because if you built it before, there's a high probability that you can build it again. There's a lot of unknowns, but it's not like you're starting from zero. You're building on that basis. The second thing to think about is, a lot of the work can be done remotely these days. So unless you're there physically, and you have to be there physically, this is true like assembly work, like on a plant and you're building a car. It's very hard to do that work remotely. But if you're doing creative work, if you're doing work that requires your brain, then you don't need to be there physically, then none of that will impact your business. Or it might impact some of it, maybe 20%, but what you have to gain is like 60%, then I would make that trade. I've had to make lots of decisions like this. While I was in school, I was studying graphic design and packaging with the intention of creating entertainment marketing, CD-ROM, music packaging. Back then there were no DVD packaging, but you get the idea, key art. And then I saw this new emerging thing with 3D and 2D animation, and it just was just at the right time, right place. I decided I want to do motion design. So in my life, I've been rewarded by making big decisions and moving fast when opportunity is there versus overthinking something and then the opportunity is gone. I mean, how many times in your life have you thought, man, I had that idea, and then 3 years later you see someone else executing on that idea, or I believed in that company and now they're like worth $10 billion. I could have gotten on the ground floor for 10 grand and be super rich today. When most people think of opportunity, they look to the past to inform them because it's much easier, as Steve Jobs said, to connect the dots looking backwards. So they'll say like, oh, real estate, realtors are doing really well. Or finance, people in finance are doing really well, so they emulate that. Now here's the problem. I've got this theory, all right? The closest star, I think, to our solar system is Alpha Centauri, and it's thousands of light years away or hundreds of light years away, meaning if you travel at the speed of light, it would take hundreds or thousands of years for that signal to get here. So when we look up to the night sky, we can see sparkle of the star and the constellation system, but we don't know if those stars are still even around because the information is about 1,000 years old. So I think opportunity is like that. They send the signals out and they echo through time and eventually you see it. But the thing is, once you see what's working, you have to imagine that a lot of people have seen it. It's not like only I look up in the sky and I can see the star. Everybody can see it. So they go running into where the gold was, not where it is. And this takes me to this Wayne Gretzky quote, which is quite famous, which is, he doesn't skate to where the puck is, he skates to where the puck is going to be. So in order for you to seize opportunity, you have to see a pattern, a trend, before everyone sees it, because that's who reaps the rewards. Case in point, I saw this interesting movement in design called motion graphics, and I moved there and I was only a handful of people, my classmates and companies, that could do the kind of work we were doing at the time in which we were doing it. And later on, people saw the reward, the excitement, the financial gain, the high-profile jobs. Then they rushed in and now it's filled with people doing motion design, and so those opportunities aren't there anymore. So make sure you're looking forward and not backwards. You have to take a leap of faith. That's where all of it's happening in terms of the opportunities. You're not chasing the trend, you're predicting the trend. You're going to where the puck is. So you say, intelligence is pattern recognition, right? Pattern matching. So if we see A, B, C, D, we can make a safe assumption the next letter is going to be E. So you see what I'm saying? It's like there are ways for you to spot patterns, and then you say, okay, based on my experience, intelligence, and intuition, my intelligence working kind of on my subconscious level, I can make a prediction as to what the next thing might be. And if that thing is what I'm interested in, that gives me a competitive advantage, because I don't want to just move to something because that's where it's trending. I want to move to something because it excites me and it seems like the data supports that this is going to become a thing. I'm making YouTube videos in 2014 when people like me weren't making YouTube videos. It was full of amateurs and creators. Now there's a whole bunch of professional people making YouTube content because they realize as a distribution platform, YouTube is super powerful. And now it's not flooded, but there's a lot of people that are professional making videos and building a social media following. So I had a head start on that. I had a couple of year head start, and that's what I'm talking about. Let's imagine that your two hands are filled with the current opportunities and your life and the habits that you have right now, and they're here. And then I say, hey, come into this room. When you walk into the room, and in the room are full of gold bars. And you're like, okay, what do I do? And I'm like, well, that's up to you now. So you have to let go of something so you can get something else, but you can't let go of these things that you're currently holding. So the window of opportunity closes and then the time runs out and the door closes, and therefore you have nothing new. You have just what you came in the room with, which is what you're holding on to. So we have to practice a form of detachment to say like, this is cool, but I'm not so in love with this thing ever so that I can't see the next best thing. And that's something that you have to keep your eye on. A lot of people say like, let's go ahead and do that thing that you learned in junior high or high school where you make a pros and cons list, things for and things against, and then you go and analyze it. But the problem is the human mind is wired such a way that it skews us to like reinforce what we already believe, a form of confirmation bias. So when you say the pros of doing something new, you only list a few things, and the cons of doing something new will be really deep. So you get stuck in that kind of analytical state, analysis or paralysis by analysis. And I think you use your imagination, your creativity, your passion, a little bit of data that you've been able to gather through either reading, research, or life experience, and you have to make an educated guess. You have to go where you think the puck's going to be. That requires some degree of risk. But in that risk is the reward. Are you better off staying where you are in any one of those circles if you predict it out 5 or 10 years? And if you are, that's where you need to be if things are blowing up. Like, for example, personally speaking, I'm getting more speaking opportunities, higher profile engagements where people are meeting me where I want to be. So if I were to switch careers or stop my career right now, I would feel like I'm on the ascent towards an apex that I've yet to meet. But once I hit the apex and I go towards the downside, I'm going to change, and you'll know it because I'll move. And I've done this multiple times before. When we're in the motion design space, we could see that the size of the opportunity is getting smaller, the frequency of the opportunity is getting smaller, and yet the competition continues to grow. Those are 3 pretty strong indicators that this is going to come to an end, at least for us. So at that point, I'm looking for the exit door. I'm looking for the next opportunity. And that's when we get into brand strategy, brand design, and working client direct. And that buys us a couple of years of time. We could have stayed in that space because that is going to continue to grow and become bigger, but something else caught my attention. Creating content, teaching in mass, using social platforms, trying to revolutionize the way that we learn and share information. That, for me, seemed like that's a good thing. I can put everything into that wagon and take that for the next 20, 30 years.